call the steering committee meeting to order. At this time, we'll call on the Vice Chair, Brad Turner, for the reading and approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I've had a chance to review the minutes and I find them in order. I make a motion for their approval.
Motion to a second.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. First item on our agenda is to fill 3 vacancies on the Linebaugh Library Board. We do have 3 applications. Mrs. Joyce Ely is a reapply, Mrs. Marcy Lehman, and Jamie Burris. We do have a letter from, from the Board of Directors. It should be on your iPad, but I will briefly read it. To whom it may concern, the Linebaugh Library Board of Directors asked that I contact you concerning the renewal of Joyce Ely and Mrs. Marcy Lehman's term on the County Library Board. Mrs. Ely and Mrs. Lehman are reapplied to serve another 3-year term. At the regular meeting May 15th, the Board of Directors voted to endorse Joyce Ely's and Marcy Lehman's continued service as board members, and it's signed by Mrs. Rita Shacklett. So at this time, or any of the, I know that Mrs. Ely had emailed me and she is out of town this week. Are there any other?
Marcy was going to try to get here, but she's in Eagleville and son's playing ball, and so I don't know if she'll make it or not.
Okay, and I think Ms. Burris is also on vacation
She's
this
in
week.
Atlanta, I think.
Okay.
That's what I was told.
So we need to go on vacation, Brad.
Yeah, that's right. Sounds like it.
All right, we have 3 applicants and 3 positions. And the chair take a motion.
Who's they be appointed by acclamation?
Okay. Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, and those 3 names will be submitted to the full county commission. We need to fill a vacancy on the Stones River Regional Library Board. Dr. Frank Lambert has applied for this position, and there is a letter in your packet also from Mrs. Shacklett. The Library Board of Directors asked me to contact you in regard to the board vacancy of the Stones River Regional Library Board. Dr. Frank Lambert is applying to fill this vacancy. We are attaching his completed application form with this letter of recommendation, and this was passed by the board on May 15th. And I believe that Dr. Lambert's in the audience. Would you like to say a few words?
I'm looking forward to being considered to serve in this very important role. Obviously, being a university professor, service is a part of my job, if you will. But besides that, I'm very pleased to be a member of this community, and I look forward to offering my services and my expertise in any way I can to help support the goals and mission of the Stones River Regional Library Board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. The chair take a motion.
I move we recommend Dr. Lambert.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Dr. Lambert, your name will be submitted to the full commission next Thursday evening.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. At this time, we will announce a vacancy on the Community Care Board. We will announce 3 vacancies on the Industrial Development Board and Health, Education, and Facilities Board. And at this time, we will discuss the Affordable Care Act eligibility for rehire. Call on our HR Director, Mrs. Stevenson.
Good evening.
Evening.
Everybody had a happy Monday.
It's Monday.
Okay, so I don't want to assume, but I'm sure most of you know what the Affordable Care Act is, the Obamacare that went into place a couple of years ago, and the county is responsible for making sure that we implement all pieces of the Affordable Care Act for our employees. One of the things that came about recently in some training that the county has received was there's something called a look-back period. There's a look-back period, and there is also another period where it's their eligibility, everybody's is not the same, so it's based on their hire date. So everybody has their own unique period, their time frame of which they become eligible for benefits or ineligible for benefits annually. Currently, that schedule of employees with hire dates and those type things are being maintained in the risk management office and are being monitored by Melissa Griffey, who is really overseeing a lot of this. Where I come into play is our office, if somebody does become eligible, we send the eligibility notice to that employee that they are then eligible for benefits and those type things. And then they respond to us whether they want the benefits or not. Some people have benefits coverage under their spouse or other means and just choose not to accept our benefit package. So there is something in there that talks about, under the ACA, about employees. There's a 13-week period. There's a window where if someone is an active full-time employee, I'll try to say this as simple as I can, it's a little complicated, but if someone is an active full-time employee and let's say they leave the county and they go to work for another employer and they decide that they want to come back to the county in any capacity, whether it be full-time or part-time. If they come back full-time, it's no harm, no foul. During that stability period and the look-back period, they were a full-time employee coming back as a full-time employee, benefits are the same, right? But if that full-time employee leaves, maybe they retire or they leave to go to another employer and decide they don't like it, whatever reason, and they leave and they want to come back part-time, that's where it gets in a little bit of a gray area. And so there's a 13-week window that is part of their stability and look-back period, that if somebody was full-time and they come back in a part-time capacity, it allows an organization to either not rehire during that 13-week period for part-time purposes or continue the benefits in a full-time capacity moving forward. So really, the only two times that this has been a gray area for the county is those individuals who retire and then want to come back and work for us in a part-time capacity to help fill in for vacations or whatever it may be. So that's really not an issue because the TCRS has a period by which they want the employees to wait before they come back anyway. So that's not really a huge issue unless it's an emergency case. So for us to say we'll rehire you back in a part-time capacity in 13 weeks isn't a big deal. The other area where we have full-time people that go part-time and then full-time is our ambulance service. And I have discussed this with Mike Nunley and Joe Hafner in their department to say this is where this rule comes into place. And it just says employees that have a period of 13 weeks or greater during which no hours of service are accrued are treated as new employees. So what that means to the county is if somebody leaves us full-time, we do not wish to rehire them for the 13 weeks as a part-time employee because they will then, after the 13 weeks, come back as a part-time employee and the county is not responsible for paying the benefits as if they were a whole full-time employee. So do y'all follow me?
So basically, they need to wait 13 weeks or more.
So the eligibility for rehire acknowledgement, that's what this is. It says the full-time county employees are eligible to participate in the multiple health care options and supplemental insurance plans offered to all employees. Each employee has a stability period under the Affordable Care Act, also known as ACA, to ensure compliance with the Affordable Care Act and to ensure Rutherford County government does not incur penalties for violation of the look-back rule. Once separated from employment, a full-time employee may not return as a part-time employee in less than 13 full weeks from the date of separation. However, an employee may return to full-time status if selected for a position for which they are qualified and eligible. This would be something that somebody who is leaving the organization, who we've not terminated for cause, but maybe leaving for another job or whatever, would then complete this knowing that, you're eligible to come back for a full-time position, but if you're coming back for your same position, we're wanting you to know that we're going to wait 13 periods before that rehire so that we don't incur a penalty. The county doesn't incur a penalty under ACA. So that's what this policy is. Are there any?
You just do that in the exit interview, or how do you?
Whenever they turn
Somewhere
in,
around there.
yeah, right. Whenever they turn in their resignation notice.
Notice or whatever.
Whenever they turn it in to let us know that that's what they're wanting to do, that's when it will be covered during that time.
Okay.
And there's not a whole lot of people that this would even apply
Sure.
to. We're just doing this as a precautionary, just so that we can say that you were, on notice. So there's probably only a handful of people that's happened even in the last year, not that many. But what it would deter is if somebody was flip-flopping back and forth, it would deter them, would help them make that decision that they want to stay as a full-time employee instead of going back and forth. So,
So you need a motion from us?
I do, please.
Well, I'll make the motion to approve this policy.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Also, Mrs. Stevenson, I think you have item number 6,
Number 6 is
the conflict of interest.
conflict of interest. I'm not going to be presenting that policy to you right at this time. Upon further reflection, recently the state legislature approved or updated the Rutherford County's purchasing policy under our private act. And so this will need to go through the purchasing committee. So I've submitted it here in the wrong place, and I didn't realize it at the time. So I'm sorry, that part's kind of new to me. So I brought forth something that you don't
Who
have.
called you out on it?
But that's not necessary. I won't point fingers. I made a mistake. I'll admit it.
That's the reason erasers are put on the end of pencils.
That's right.
Okay, let's move on to item number 7.
So item number 7 is, before the policy's created, I'm here asking basically for your permission and blessing to move forward with creating the policy or exploring. I've explored it pretty intensely, but it's a reimbursement policy. The Board of Education already uses this policy for their screenings. One of the items that's on here, a new hire when they're brought in says, I understand that if I leave employment within 6 months of my contract date, the county will be reimbursed through payroll deduction for my fingerprint charges. Some of you who are on budget and all of you who are on the county commission have seen that our testing fee line, our employee testing line continues to go up and up. And the reason why is because when you have turnover and you have to retest all these new employees, your testing line is going to go up. Since January of this year, we have had 126 new hires. And that is pretty expensive for the county. And I'm not saying we don't need the employees. I mean, people retire, they get sick and can't work, or other things happen, pursue another opportunity, or just whatever the reason is. So everybody's going to have turnover. I mean, you're just going to have it. That's the cost of doing business. But one of the things that I don't think everybody realizes is what the cost it is. So there are certain departments, for example, and I'll just use corrections just because it's easy and that's where the majority of them, most of our testing costs come from the public safety sector anyways. So like you have an MMPI, they have to take this. This is a requirement of TCI, Tennessee Corrections Institute requires that we do that, and that's a personality testing to make sure. So they have to go with a license. I guess it's a licensed psychologist to have the testing. Well, that's $170 every time we do a test on somebody. So that's anybody in law enforcement, ambulance service, and corrections. They have to go through that testing. Then all of our public safety employees, which includes PAWS, the health department, everybody has to have the TB testing because one of the nature of their jobs. Then we have physicals. Our corrections is required under TCI. Our ambulance service have to have physicals to make sure that they are physically capable of doing the jobs that they have to do. Our firefighters, the basic physical is $57.50 for a basic physical, and then our firefighters' physicals are $327 because the firefighters have to have the OSHA testing, they have to have a pulmonary test, audiogram, they have to be able to hear to make sure that if they're fighting fire, and there's several other things that go into the firefighter. So it's really costly to have these tests. Then when we do the breath alcohol, whether it's for random, the only time a breath alcohol comes in is somebody has an accident, whether it be post-accident bodily injury or property damage. and if they're pulled for a random. So a breath alcohol isn't pulled as frequently, but that's $35 every time we do it. And a drug test is $40, which you have just recently, the commission has given us permission to do drug testing in-house for pre-employment, which will help us some because we can do that for $12 and have the same benefits. But our randoms, I still want to go. Our accidents, I still want to go to Concentra because, or one of our other providers, Middle Tennessee Occupational, Physicians Medicals, who's on our panel, to make sure that somebody else is reading that. I don't want to be the one that reads it on a post-accident or a random. But that will offset it some. And then our background checks that we do on our positions that, we need to make sure that we're being mindful of that are $32. So as you can see, that laundry list of things adds up pretty quick. So what I am wanting to research, and I've discussed this some with Josh, Tennessee Code actually has a policy. It's 50-2-110, I believe. Yes, and where it allows us to offset the employee's last paycheck. And you can only do that in certain circumstances because the Fair Labor Standards Act and the wage and hour requires that you can only do certain things. You can't take somebody below minimum wage, those type things. But Tennessee Code allows us to offset any monies owed by the employee to the employer as long as we have agreement in advance of taking the monies away, as long as the employee has a minimum of 14-day notice. So what I want to do and draft a policy to move forward is that this be part of a new hire packet. So when an employee goes, if it's an employee of a correctional facility and they get all of their information, we have a recap spreadsheet that says this is what it costs, and the employee knows that going into. We put a dollar amount. These are the items that, should you leave, you will be on a prorated basis. So it wouldn't be the full amount. If they stay with us, during the probationary period is 1 year long. If they stay for they stay for 5 years, they don't reimburse us because they stay beyond that 1 year period. But if they leave during that 1 year period, there's a prorated basis dependent upon when they leave in order to reimburse us. So that is what I'm wanting to do, is to get some reimbursement, some of the monies to help offset our expenses. It can have a negative effect. One of the reasons why we don't ask for it in advance is because some people without a job wouldn't be able to pay those kind of fees in order to get an employee, and we need an employee and as a recruitment. But the other thing is I don't want us to continue, or the taxpayers to continue to have to pay the expenses of turnover. Somebody coming and working, and getting in the door at juvenile detention just to move on to the Tennessee Department of Corrections in Nashville 3 months later, so that they can have it on their resume that they worked in corrections. And so there has to be something to help offset some of these areas. So it could be a negative if somebody knew that they were going to have to do that. It might be a deterrent. So that's why I've been a little leery about bringing it forward. But just knowing the cost, how they have raised the last 2 years, I've had to come back the last 2 years and ask for more money in that testing line. And I just think that that's something that, I would like to do if you think that it would be wise and meaningful. There are other organizations that do it. I haven't checked with the City of Murfreesboro, but there are some other that I researched and found online from different organizations. Most of these are corporate, but there also is a local policy that somebody created. I'm trying to think who this was. I don't think I wrote it down on here. Yeah, I didn't put the town that was on here, but they did the same thing. They created an agreement to do that and read it into their record. So, any thoughts?
So our probation is a year?
Currently it's 6 months for every department other than public safety. The public safety positions are all 1 year
Okay.
probationary. And it's a training period, probationary period, because there's a lot to learn. And just because somebody is not kept during their probationary period doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad person, but they've got to be able to do the job. I mean, somebody who's hired for firefighters obviously got to be able to pass all their training, respond to fire, those type things. Or somebody at Paul's has got to be able to go out into the field and deal with the public appropriately. I mean, it's a hard job. So any of the public safety positions are out there dealing with the public, and part of that is a customer service aspect, and part of it is essential job functions aspect. So they've got to be able to do twofold. So if we if we release somebody in their probationary period because they were unable to complete the functions of their job, just not that they were doing, not that they stole from, did
Yeah,
anything
okay.
wrong. I'm not trying, if we terminated them for cause, that's when this would come in to, if we terminated for cause or if they left to go to another employer, that's when this would come in play. If we released them during their probationary period, this would not come into play because that time is a time for us to take the time to evaluate them and them to evaluate us. It's just for those individuals who come and use us as a training ground and then really move on to the next person within that 1 year time frame is really what it's about. So anybody that we looked at and said, I just don't think maybe this is the best fit for you, and maybe we didn't have an opening at that time that they were interested in or had the skill sets to do, and we had to let them go, that they wouldn't have to reimburse. That's not what this is for. This would be for somebody who quits us for other reasons.
That was gonna be my question, so that.
Yeah, so if somebody, it's not, sometimes they don't know, somebody who signs up for PAWS thinks they're going to be playing with puppies and kittens, and they are to an extent, but there's other things that come along with that, and sometimes that's not maybe what they signed up for or thought that they wanted to do, and that's okay. I mean, they didn't know until they got in there, and that's different, but those individuals, who come and stay for a short amount of time and then leave us and then go somewhere else, and that kind of constant turnover, and that's hard on the county, it's hard on the departments, because they stand in a continuous training cycle, and that wears on the morale in the department, and those that have to do the training, and then functionality of the department that they're in. Somebody's always covering for somebody else because they're not up to speed with what they're doing.
Okay, any thoughts from the committee? So I think what you're looking for is, do you want us to allow you to proceed with this policy, or?
Yeah, before we get too far into it.
Okay.
I mean, I pulled, like I said, some laws. I pulled laws. There's several local Tennessee firms, Bassberry and Sims has wrote some information about that. There's some other attorneys, and of course I ran it by Josh, told him what I was interested in doing, and then I pulled the Tennessee code to see if it was allowable under that, and which it is. So, tried to get those, but I just didn't want to. I didn't want to go down a road because it is, it has its pros and its cons. So I just wanted to make sure that this would be the blessings of this committee before I went further with it.
Like the last 12 months of last year, have you done any research as to what we may have been reimbursed under those guidelines? Would it have made any kind of a significant difference?
That would probably have been a good thing to brought to you tonight. I know that we have increased, our budget originally was $30,000 and we've added another 10, so we're at $40,000. I would say with the 126 new hires, that was the turnover associated with those 126 turnovers, but all of them I can't say would have qualified for this. However, I will tell you that I have had to send out several letters asking for equipment, that we've seen an uptick in me having to send that out where people were leaving, not, returning their equipment and their supplies, their uniforms, those type things. But to give you a concrete number, no, I cannot. And if that's something you would like to know in advance of making a decision, I'll be happy to complete that and bring that back next month. I don't have a problem at all.
Might be good for you,
Okay.
just to see what.
Would save us, yeah.
Okay. Is there any more comments or a motion?
I really think that if Ms. Stevenson thinks that it's the right direction for the county to go in, I would encourage her
Okay.
to do that, and if we need to put that in form of a motion, also move in that direction.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Johnson, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll bring back the policy, I'll bring back your numbers just so you know.
Thank you.
That's it for me, thank you.
Also on your, thank you. In your packet of information, you'll see a list of litigation. This is just for information and for public view. Under other business, we do have a request from the mayor.
We let Mr. Johnson carry this discussion because he requested after their road board met, they have suggested that we craft a resolution. You have that in front of you, and you may describe that to them, Mr. Johnson, if you would, please.
What brought this all about is the highway department was the recipient of a windfall of $1,062,588 and about 24 cents or 94 cents, something like that, due to the legislators working through the budget, that this $56 million that the governor had in his budget did not go directly to TDOT. It's the formula that they use for each county. Rutherford County was the recipient of that kind of money. So as chairman of the road board, we had a road board meeting this morning, and I talked to Superintendent Greg Brooks, and brought this to the attention of the members of the committee, and we decided that a joint resolution would be appropriate for joint resolution of appreciation to the governor and the legislators that went to bat for us and helped us out with $1 million in additional money for the highway department to operate on for this year. So that is the resolution in front of you. Kudos to Vicki and everybody involved with this, Mr. Mayor, because this happened this morning at 7 o'clock, and this is the byproduct of it, and looks very good, and I appreciate any consideration y'all might give to this. But, I think one attaboy cancels out about 5 all hex anytime you get around to it. So
this is basically
a joint
a motion
resolution.
of a resolution of
Yes,
appreciation.
correct.
Okay. Okay, so is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? Commissioner Peete, any discussion?
Should we include the senators in there too?
I don't.
Yeah, it should be all about, what's the language say?
It's just the representatives.
State legislative delegation, that's a good catch.
Okay, so we're going to add Senator Catron and Jim Tracy.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
And also, Mr. Johnson, if you would let maybe someone else look at this as well.
Sure.
And any other
Yes.
changes that might be necessary, we just crafted this one pass at this, okay? So
Actually, the concept is what we're looking at. You know, the verbiage and everything basically is fine, and if there's any addition need to be done to it, well, I'll run this by Greg and other people and see if they have anything else to add to it. But
that's what I want to get.
yeah,
Let Greg and others look at this, and then we'll add the state senators' names there.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens and Commissioner Johnson. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Any other business? Okay, this meeting stands adjourned. All right. Robert, you got